I know, I know. Yes, I'm here again talking about Modifier 25. Yeah, you might be thinking, holy shit, I can't believe he's talking about Modifier 25 again. Well, the questions keep coming back over and over, and that's why I keep talking about this, including the most recent Urology Urology Coding and Reimbursement podcast. Let me see if I can pull this up right here. Episode number 128, Modifier 25, unrelated to the decision to perform procedure discussion. I mean, it never ends. In addition, in the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, Tori asked, I don't see many examples of the use of Modifier 25 in the hospital. I should say, as a specialist consulting a patient in the hospital. What would you say to the example of a hospital-based new patient evaluated by a urologist with the decision to perform ureteroscopy on the same day due to intractable pain, and I assume it's probably from a stone? What would need to be documented in order to be paid for the E&M in addition to the ureteroscopy, no global, which is a 0-day global procedure? I think it is unreasonable that we do a full assessment of a patient in the hospital, history, exam, etc., but are penalized by not being paid for taking them promptly to the OR rather than waiting until the next day or several days later to address their problem. Thanks. So as usual in the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, I'm going live in the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group right now to talk about this issue. And for those of you who are watching this on a replay or watching on YouTube, make sure you give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, etc. So let's get into it a little bit more. I know, again, Modifier 25, right? How many videos have I done on Modifier 25? You can find it on YouTube. You can find it in this group. But it seems like this is a pervasive problem. This problem dates back all the way to, believe it or not, as far back as 2002, 2005. Because according to DHS, Department of Health and Human Services, through the Office of Inspector General, Daniel Levinson performed an audit of the use of Modifier 25, and you can read it in this report. This was a report released on November 2005. And I'm going to read you the summary down here. So they looked at 450 claims billed in the calendar year 2002. So this is 20 plus years ago. Using Modifier 25, they were able to audit 431 of those sample claims. And the major finding, and I quote, 35% of claims using Modifier 25 that Medicare allowed in 2002 did not meet program requirements, resulting in $538 million in improper payments. That's right. $500 million. This is back in 2002. So imagine with inflation and everything like that, it's a lot more money. And that's why CMS is on the warpath. OIG has claimed that Modifier 25 has been on the roadmap, on their work plan for audits since forever. Every year they're auditing, they're looking at Modifier 25. In my opinion, it's such a simple concept, but obviously not, because people are still asking questions regarding Modifier 25. So in the PRS Network Urology Coding and Reimbursement podcast, episode number 128, they talked about Modifier 25 and the use of the modifier, and there's some confusion as to whether or not you can use it in the setting that Tori discussed. There are basically two places where two different people are asking the same question. Why can't you? Tori's question is implying why can't you bill for a Modifier 25 when you are seeing the patient for renal colic and you decide to take the patient to the operating room? Well, the short answer is you can and you should, and it is appropriate to use Modifier 25 in the situation that Tori described. Now, some of the misguided hospital coders and billers may be looking at something from NCCI, National Correct Coding Initiative. And I'm going to pull that up right now to show you. According to Chapter 1 of the NCCI manual, and I quote, if a procedure has a global period of 0 or 10 days, it is defined as a minor surgical procedure. In general, E&M services performed on the same date of service as a minor surgical procedure are included in the payment for the procedure. And here's the problem. The decision to perform a minor surgical procedure is included in the payment for the minor surgical procedure and shall not be reported separately as an E&M service. And I will repeat that. This decision to perform a minor surgical procedure is included in the payment for the minor surgical procedure and shall not be reported separately as an E&M service. So a lot of coders will look at that and say, well, clearly you see the patient and you take them to the operating room the same day to perform a ureteroscopic surgery, maybe put up a stent. Both are 0-day global procedures. Clearly, according to NCCI Chapter 1, according to what I just read, you cannot bill for the E&M service when you perform that procedure. So the answer is a little bit nuanced. And it's actually not really nuanced, but it's clear to me, clear to a lot of people who understand the concept, but not for everybody. And I'm going to explain to you why a Modifier 25 is correctly, when correctly documented, should be used, and the urologist should be paid for the performance of the procedure and the E&M service. So in this situation, say the patient comes in with a stone, a ureteral stone that is obstructed. The decision to say, oh, I'm just going to take the patient to the operating room, that is part of the global for that procedure. Meaning, if you predetermined that the patient is going to have that surgery, for instance, you electively schedule the patient to undergo ureteroscopic surgery, the day of the surgery, when you see the patient to make sure that, hey, he or she is still okay to undergo the procedure, no UTI symptoms, the urine looks okay, vitals look good, he or she may or may not have stopped the anticoagulation, you make sure that the patient has obtained the appropriate clearances, labs look okay, etc. All that evaluation and evaluating the patient the day of the procedure, when you've already previously determined that you're going to take the patient to the procedure, all that evaluation on the day of the procedure is included in the global of the procedure, the global package of the procedure, the generous payment that you get. Yeah, sarcastically speaking. So if you've already decided that you're going to take the patient to the OR, and you see the patient that day of the procedure and making sure that the patient's okay to go to the procedure, go to the OR, that evaluation is part of the global and it's included. I completely agree that, and you should not be able to bill a Modifier 25 unless you're addressing a totally separate issue. Remember, significant and separately identifiable E&M service. If you just simply take the patient to the OR that day, you do not get to bill a Modifier 25 E&M service when you see that patient. Now, here's the distinction. You are called, in Tori's situation, and I'm going to imply this is what she means, when you are called to see the patient in the operating room, or not in the operating room, in the hospital, you get a consult in the hospital for a stone in the ureter. Right, the patient's having intractable pain, or maybe hydronephrosis, or maybe azotemia or hyperkalemia because of an obstructing stone, diabetic patient who has acute renal failure. You see the patient. You don't immediately say, I'm going to take you to the OR and perform ureteroscopy, right? Of course you don't. I saw a patient recently with that same exact situation. Patient with a distal ureteral stone, diabetic, creatinine of 5, potassium of 5.4. Do I say I'm going to take you to the operating room right away? Heck no. I look at the imaging. I look at the labs. I talk to the hospitalist, make sure the patient's MPO. Most importantly, I discuss with the patient the treatment options, including percutaneous nephrostomy tube, maybe simply putting up a stent and let everything cool off, including ureteroscopic intervention because the urine looks clear and he wants to, through shared decision making, we decide to take him to the OR and perform this procedure. All of this discussion, all of this formulation, all of this cerebration, this discussion, the shared decision making, that is not part of the global for ureteroscopy if and when you decide to perform the procedure. Okay? All that cerebration, all that deliberation, all that medical decision making, the shared decision making, that is what is separate. Okay? That is what is separate and identifiable from the decision to perform ureteroscopic surgery. And that is the part where, that is the E&M service where you can bill a Modifier 25 when you take the patient to the OR and perform a 0-day global procedure, whether that is putting up a stent or ureteroscopic surgery. Okay? That is the distinction. We can talk about theory, we can talk about the language of NCCI, but I think in very simple terms. I have to come up with concrete examples so that my simple brain can understand what is part of the global and what is not part of the global. A lot of coders are confused, I guess, when they read this NCCI language and they don't quite understand the decision for surgery is not simply seeing the patient and say, I'm going to take you to the operating room. No, it's everything else that is part of the decision regarding the various treatment options and ultimately the decision to undergo surgery. It's not simply, I'm going to take the patient to the OR right away. So all that decision-making, all that assimilation of data, all that discussion, the shared decision-making, that is separate. That is separately identifiable. That is significant and separately identifiable from the CPT service included in the global of ureteroscopy. Now, you may be thinking, great, fine and dandy, John. Why are we still being denied? Well, unfortunately, in the third-party game that we have to play now, not only do you have to think it, but you have to verbalize it, articulate it, and in this situation, you have to write it down. You have to dictate it. So all that mental cerebration, all that thinking may be quick, right? We've done it so many times. It is so quick and it is so easy in your mind, but to the coder, to the person abstracting from your documentation, and there it is again, documentation. You have to document it, or else people are not going to know that you actually performed a significant and separately identifiable service. So you have to write down all of this cerebration. The fact that you looked at the imaging studies, the fact that there was hydronephrosis, that you considered the fact that the patient is in acute renal failure, you talk to the patient and discuss the various treatment options, and then ultimately decide on a particular treatment course, which may or may not be surgery. So all of that work that you did is what is separate, right? That is what is significant and separately identifiable. All of that extra work not included in the global of ureteroscopy. All of that extra stuff that you did, you need to articulate it, document it somehow, whether a scribe or maybe using voice recognition. That is what you need to write down so that any auditor, coder, biller can look at that documentation and say, yep, significant and separately identifiable service was performed. Now, if they are confused simply reading this NCCI document, well, they direct them to look at this video so that they understand what is significant and separately identifiable from what is included in the global of that ureteroscopic surgery with a 0-day global procedure. So I know it's, the painters and I, we always say that this is nuanced. Yes and no. I mean, once you understand it, it's not really nuanced. It is just straightforward. It is plain as day. So if you are interested in learning more about coding and billing, modifier use, and how to effectively use modifiers in your everyday. Now, yeah, $538 million back in 2005, they found that it was wrongly used. You don't have to be one of those people. You can be one of those who confidently use Modifier 25 on a daily basis, which I did today. Every single day seems like when I'm performing a procedure and I'm counseling the patient, I'm using a Modifier 25 appropriately. And for those of you in the know, or maybe not in the know, remember that you do not need a different diagnosis when you use a Modifier 25. That is correct. You do not need to use a different diagnosis. And that is, you can look it up yourself under Modifier 25 in your CPT manual. You don't need a separate diagnosis. So if you want to get better at doing this, if you want to be able to confidently bill in Modifier 25 and not worry about, oh my gosh, am I doing this correctly? Am I going to have a take back? Am I going to be audited? Well, you are going to be audited. That's just a given, right? Every time they ask for your records, you're being audited. So I don't really care about audits. I expect that to be happening. So I want my documentation to be so good that any dummy looking at my documentation will be able to say, okay, there's the significant work that was done, and it is clearly identifiable, separately identifiable in cerebration and also in documentation. So if you want to get to that point, and for me, it took a lot of, and I'm continuing to learn and making sure that I'm updated. It took a lot of exposures for me to finally understand all this. And once you understand it, it is really second nature, because for me, I'm using this nearly every single day when I'm in the office performing procedures and seeing patients and counseling them after these procedures, a lot of these procedures, okay? So I'm using Modifier 25 all day long, every time I'm in the office. And there's, number one, no shame in that. And number two, I am confident that I'm using it correctly. So if you want to get to that point, and for me, it took many years and many exposures. And for me, I needed to attend multiple seminars to finally catch on as to when I can safely and legitimately use a Modifier 25. And also I had to learn, how do I document appropriately to make sure that any auditor will see that I'm compliant. I know, third-party payer game. We're just this is nothing but a game. So it took many iterations, many exposures. If you want to learn more about Modifier 25, Modifier 57, Modifier 24, Modifier 59, Modifier 95, so any of these modifiers that you commonly use in urology, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to consider attending the upcoming Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. So if you go to prsnetwork.com and click on right here, seminars, courses, and on the left-hand side, you'll see Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar in January 2023. Registration is currently open. It'll be a 2-day live event. This is a picture of a recent seminar, and we had about almost 100 people attend in December of 2022 in Las Vegas. The upcoming seminar will be in New Orleans, and I'm going to play you a short video of an interview that I did with Alexandra Rogers, and here she is talking about the upcoming urology coding Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. This is from the December 2nd and 3rd, 2022 Vegas seminar where I did this interview. Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be here with Dr. Alexandra Rogers. She is a famous urologist who is multifaceted, worked in a multi-specialty group before. Now she went out on her own. She's now in Boulder, Colorado. Lovely family, lovely person in general, big into incontinence. And we are here at the Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. I believe, is this the first time you've been here?
It is my first time attending. I've been wanting to attend for years, and it's actually a perfect time to come and learn more efficient coding, given that I'm changing from a multi-specialty practice. I'm joining a bunch of gynecologists, and I want to be as efficient as possible now that I've been in the game for a while. And I don't think I was coding terribly, but definitely after a day and a half of lectures here, modifiers, how to get to a level 4, how to be compliant, how to really juice and maximize what you're doing so that you can treat patients better and also avoid burnout by, seeing a good outcome from your efficiencies.
That's amazing. So multi-specialty to...
Joining a bunch of gynecologists, and my goal is to be the leakage widget there and treat all the stress incontinence, overactive bladder, because as we know, a lot of these women are not treated, can't find a physician well skilled in this, and my goal is to funnel them to me in a gynecology model.
That's interesting. Usually urology practice, from what I understand, urology practices are the ones who hire urogynecologists, but then you flip the model around. Something else you're working on that's exciting too is a product that is emerging in the market in urinary incontinence. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I love all things new in overactive bladder, considering 80% of patients are not treated, and we have the biggest market share with anticholinergics, 15%. So much mounting data on CNS risk, recent white paper, OG statement saying women over 70 should not be on these drugs. So we certainly need more options. More recently, there's been a lot of development in tibial implants. We now have a first and only FDA-approved equine tibial implant. It's done with just local anesthetic, automatic for patients, so certainly has a place in the toolbox as an added tool.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of inequality when it comes to the care of women and men. There's been definitely an overemphasis on men in the past, and I'm glad that you are bringing some of this technology to the forefront. The other inequality, a big inequality that our friend Dr. Kelly Casperson, I'm sure, addresses very, very
Go Kelly.
Yeah, very, very prominently is the orgasmic inequality between men and women. So we digress. But tell us a little bit more about your experience here. What is one thing that you think, what is one big takeaway from coming here so far?
I think just the emphasis that it's a team effort. This amazing room is full of so many coders. So I've learned a lot just in the last day and a half, talking to coders, like asking about scenarios. How can I build this? So it was a really nice opportunity to be with coders who are certainly your partner in crime in making sure that you are as efficient as possible.
And it's definitely a team sport. And the other thing the other phrase that I kept saying here at the meeting is that it's a game.
I love gamifying anything, whether it's online reputation, third line penetration rates, how you're doing with being efficient in coding. Yep, if you can gamify and find joy in that, then it really helps prevent our burnout issue, where, as we know, 49% of female urologists currently are burned out. So we need to turn that around somehow.
And we definitely need more female urologists. That number is improving, thank goodness.
Yep, it's 10%, but the more creative we can get in models that sustain women staying in the business is what we really need to strive to do right now.
So this is your first time here. What would you tell other practices and people who have never been here? What would you tell them?
They should all come, and they should make it not just about this meeting, but over time, how can you keep improving your coding efficiencies? It's not a one-time meeting, but every team should come and do a coding course so that they're being the best that they can be, and that in turn will improve patient care.
Yeah, and as you said, it is a team sport. Coders, billers, we have APPs here, we have physicians here. It's truly a team sport, and you hit the nail on the head. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you so much, and so nice to meet you in person.
Thanks. All right, you heard it. Now, it is truly a game. It is truly a game. And understanding the rules of the game is what's going to make you not burn out. And like Dr. Rogers said, you have to engage the entire team. It is not just you alone, you the coder, or you the biller, you the physician. Everyone needs to be swimming in the same direction. For instance, in just this Modifier 25 situation, the person whose MPI is on the CMS 1500 form, the person needs to understand what is required in documentation for Modifier 25. So when you do use it, you will be appropriately paid. You will be appropriately using it, and you will be paid. So gamifying it is a game, and I'm going to say that partner in crime. When Dr. Rogers said partner in crime, she's using that in a figurative fashion. Clearly, we are giving you the correct rules and regs so that you can be compliant, so that nobody is going to impose any takebacks from your practice. You're going to be so good with your documentation and with your compliance plan and process that nobody will be able to say you did something wrong, and they're going to take things back from you. Believe it or not, there have been cases of kind of an unscrupulous, malicious prosecution by the federal government against possibly certain groups of physicians when it comes to fraud and abuse. So you want to make sure that you are compliant, make sure that your documentation is so good that no one can come back and try to catch you. So if you are thinking about doing that, consider attending the Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. This will be, the upcoming one will be at the end of January 27th and 28th, 2023, this year, and in New Orleans, Louisiana at Harrah's. And registration information is down here. Click on to register for New Orleans. The agenda will be listed on this website. So PRSnetwork.com. Check them out. I will see you there. And as usual, thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye.